Today we're working on the yarn carrier for my auto knitter and are making this movie because at this age, the yarn carriers may differ slightly from model to model, but they're likely to have suffered similar wear and tear. My carrier is one of the brass ones. These were apparently made during war times when there were steel shortages. It's been working fine for knitting socks without ribbing, but we began to suspect that the wear and tear was affecting the performance of the ribber. Brass is a fairly soft metal, so over time the yarn has actually worn grooves into the carrier. We may eventually attempt to make a new one from scratch, but for today, Jack is going to try to fix this most prominent groove. In addition, we have some concerns about the upright stand that supports the yarn carrier, E, in this picture.
From the picture in the manual, it looks like the groove should be continuously the same width from the bottom to the top, or from the beginning of the groove at the bottom of the stand piece to the top. And this one obviously doesn't. You can see some wear patterns where the screw has been tightened several times at the top of what is the groove now, but it looks to me as if that rough narrow spot needs to be widened so that we have the full length of the groove to adjust the height of the yarn guide. And so that's what we did. I took a flat file, a small one, and I took the hips that were formed from a narrow spot off so that now we have a long continuous slot. It's not perfectly even at the top, but now the screw will travel all the way to the top of the groove. This product is a moldable two-part epoxy. That means there's a resin and a hardener, and you need the two together to make the epoxy compound. It takes a while to get it kneaded, but you also have quite a bit of time to use it once you've got it mixed. Now, in this case, what we want to do is fill in the grooves in this brass. Sometimes it's very hard to heat a piece of brass and put brass into it because these older ones will fall apart with a little bit of heat. So this is a good thing to have in your toolbox because once it's hardened, you can drill it. You can even tap threads into it. And you will find that it has a number of uses for such as what we're doing. These grooves have to be gone. They keep snagging the yarn and changing the tension and the direction that the yarn takes because it's not a smooth, round hole. I've looked at it, measured it, and determined that it was originally a 1/8 inch hole in the initial guide and in the guide that I'm working on now for the final yarn disposition to the needles. So I'm going to fill them both in. I'm going to drill them, once it's hardened, I'm going to drill them both back out so that we have a nice round hole with no elongation in any direction to snag the yarn or change where the yarn is being deposited. The whole purpose of this piece is so you know exactly where the yarn is for the needle to grab it. And you don't really want any variation. It needs to be where you can set it correctly to be there when the needle wants the yarn, and that's what we're going to do. You'll notice I have a 1/8 inch drill bit with me. In the initial guide, when I've finished putting the epoxy in, I'm going to make myself a little bit of a start because I'm going to use a hand twist drill, not any kind of a powered drill to do this. It's easy to do with a nice sharp bit, but I want to have a centered start so that I get exactly where the hole was to begin with. Once I drill through the initial guide, then I can use that to pilot into the hole that we want to make in the primary delivery guide section of this yarn carrier. So it works pretty good. You have to be patient. You have to read the label and give it the amount of time it says to be fully hardened. But you will find this is very helpful with old pieces of equipment when a hole is too big, a hole is worn out, threads are gone. You can close it up, you can drill it, and then you can tap new threads. I find it very helpful for a lot of different projects.
Jack's repair is hardly visible on the finished yarn guide, and it is working beautifully.